A young black boy walks through a busy U.S. airport holding hands with a man who says he's his father. But something doesn't add up, especially to a trained K-9 who silently blocks the boy's way. From a single moment of hesitation unfolds a hidden truth, forged documents, a silent plea for help, and a disturbing network masked as charity. This is a story built from the real cracks in our world. If stories like this matter to you, like and subscribe. And tell us, where are you watching from the morning rush at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport? At its usual thrum, a rolling blend of loudspeaker announcements, suitcase wheels against tile floors, and the low hum of jet engines echoing through the glass-paneled atriums. It was the kind of everyday chaos that blanketed everything into a predictable blur. A man in his mid-50s, dressed in a casual blazer and loafers, his gray hair neatly combed, walked briskly through Terminal C holding the hand of a young boy. The man's expression was practiced, alert, yet casual, his grip on the boy's wrist just a touch too firm. The boy, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, wore a red hoodie and jeans, and his small frame moved with stiff compliance. He looked around with the kind of nervous restraint that didn't belong to a child going on a vacation. Passengers moved around them, preoccupied with boarding gates, coffee orders, or last-minute ticket adjustments. Nobody noticed anything off. The man could have been the boy's father, uncle, or even a family friend. In a sea of movement, no one had the attention span to look twice, but not everyone was blind. Just outside the security checkpoint, Officer Dana Ruiz stood beside her K-9 partner Scout, a 5-year-old Belgian Malinois with a sharp mind and a keen nose. The dog had already flagged 2 suspicious bags that morning, one carrying an undeclared firearm, the other packed with contraband cash. But now, Scout's gaze fixed elsewhere, not at any luggage, not at the line of rushing travelers, but directly at the little boy in the red hoodie. At first, Dana didn't notice. She was scanning the surrounding foot traffic when the leash went taut. She looked down. Scout was locked in place, his body tense, his ears pricked forward, and his eyes focused like a laser. She followed his line of sight straight to the boy. "Scout," she whispered, tugging the leash gently. "What is it?" Normally, if Scout detected explosives or drugs, he would sniff circle bark. But this wasn't protocol. This was something else, something deeper. The dog didn't bark, he didn't move, he simply blocked Dana's path, his front paw subtly shifting forward in a low, protective stance. The man and the boy walked past them just a few feet away. Scout didn't move toward them, but his gaze never left the boy. Dana's instinct kicked in, not suspicion, but curiosity. She turned to follow their path with her eyes. Nothing out of place, and yet something unsettled her. The boy didn't look at anyone, not even the man holding his wrist. But just as they passed, the boy's eyes briefly flicked toward Scout. A flicker, barely a second, but long enough for Dana to register something raw in that glance. Not fear, not surprise. Something closer to hope. She frowned. Scout took a step forward but didn't lunge. His body was calm, but his attention was unshakable. It was enough to keep Donna still for a moment longer. Over her shoulder, her supervisor's voice came through the radio. "Ruiz, status check." She pressed the mic. No alerts, but Scout's acting off. She paused. Not aggressive, focused. A beat of silence followed. Then proceed as usual. "We've got a full queue." Dana exhaled, still uneasy. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe Scout was distracted. Still, her gut didn't agree. Meanwhile, the man and the boy reached the Delta check-in counter. The man handed over 2 passports with a confident smile, answering the attendant's questions with a casual southern drawl. "My boy and I are heading to Chicago to see family," he said. The woman behind the counter smiled back, asked for their bags, and tagged them for priority. The boy didn't say a word. Across the terminal, Scout finally moved. He sat, but his eyes were still locked in that direction. Dana knelt beside him, giving a light scratch behind his ears. "You're not wrong often," she murmured. A couple of hours passed. Gate B-17. The boy sat alone in a row of airport chairs while the man walked to the restroom. A nearby janitor noticed something odd. The boy hadn't touched the water bottle in front of him, hadn't moved much either. Just sat there, eyes darting occasionally to the TSA officers nearby. Back at the K9 unit office, Dana pulled up the security cam feed of the checkpoint. She watched the man and the boy walk past. She paused the frame at the moment Scout stared at the child. She enlarged it. The boy's face. There was something unnatural about how quiet he was. His left sleeve was slightly too long, covering his wrist. She leaned closer. There was bruising visible around the collarbone. Barely noticeable, but it was there. She stood up. "Captain, we need to flag Gate B-17. Her captain raised an eyebrow. "Why? Something's not right?" Scout flagged that kid without a scent. He's done it before with trauma victims. No barking, just blocking, same pattern. She hesitated. And there's something in the boy's expression, like he wanted someone to notice. The captain nodded, already reaching for his radio. "I'll have TSA reroute a uniformed patrol to that gate." Quietly, at Gate B-17 boarding had just begun. The man returned, motioning for the boy to get up. The boy obeyed, but glanced just once back toward the terminal entrance, as if searching for someone. They scanned their tickets and walked through the gate. But as the boy disappeared down the ramp, Scout, now beside Dana again, stood up sharply and let out a low growl. A sound so rare, so deliberate that it sent a chill down Dana's spine. She turned to her captain. "I want that plane delayed." Scout's low growl reverberated through Dana's body like a quiet alarm, subtle but unmistakably intentional. The kind of sound that bypassed logic and went straight to instinct. She had worked with him long enough to trust that when he broke protocol, there was a reason buried somewhere deeper than scent. This wasn't a reaction to explosives or drugs. This was something more human, more visceral. And now that the boy was past security, something in Scout's body posture hadn't relaxed. His tail was still stiff, his weight still forward. Dana studied the footage again. Rewinding, playing back the moment, frame by frame. Scout had blocked the path subtly but deliberately. Not with force, but presence, his body simply placing itself between the child and the forward motion of the crowd. That maneuver wasn't standard. It was a learned behavior from stress response training. Dogs were sometimes trained to detect psychological distress, high cortisol levels, body temperature shifts, irregular movement, and they responded differently than they did to contraband. They became still, watchful. Just like Scout had. She zoomed in on the screen. The boy, in the split second their eyes met, had looked down and to the side like someone caught in a lie. Not fear of punishment, but fear of being recognized. The kind of look a kid gives when they know you see through them. Dana didn't need more convincing. She pulled up the child's file from TSA check-in logs, matching it with the man's ticket. Everything was in order. Tickets bought together, passports matching, all IDs cleared. But it was too smooth, too clean. In her experience, legitimate family travel, especially last-minute ones, were rarely that perfectly aligned. She tapped the screen, paused on the moment the boy's face turned away from Scout. That right there. That's when she knew. She called TSA Security Liaison Officer Maddox over. "Something's not sitting right with this pair," she said, not taking her eyes off the monitor. Maddox looked at the paused screen. They cleared biometrics facial match checks. Nothing pinged. "I'm not talking about data. I'm talking about behavior. Look at the boy." Maddox leaned closer. "He looks tense. He won't look at the dog, and the dog won't take his eyes off him." She pulled out a laminated behavior chart from her folder, pointing to a highlighted section. "Non-aggressive sustained focus and forward body pressure. We train that for trauma detection, hostage abuse, PTSD. Scout hasn't moved since the kid passed." Maddox still looked skeptical. "You think the boy's in trouble?" Dana nodded. "Or he's been taught not to make noise, not to draw attention. Either way, something's off. And Scout knows it." Meanwhile, the boy sat quietly near Gate B-17, legs dangling off the edge of the waiting area chair, backpack clutched in front of him. The man seated beside him scrolled casually through his phone, never once making eye contact with the boy unless someone walked by. It was subtle, but there was a pattern. Every time uniformed personnel passed, the man's posture shifted just slightly, more guarded, less relaxed. The boy, on the other hand, kept scanning his surroundings not with the wide-eyed curiosity of a child about to fly, but with a low, furtive sort of tension. At one point, Scout and Donna made their way slowly into the seating area under the guise of a routine patrol. As they passed by, the boy visibly stiffened. Dana watched without turning her head. Scout again paused, not in alarm, but in that quiet, steady way that set off every alarm bell in Dana's chest. The boy didn't look at him this time. Instead, he turned his head fully to the side, chin lowered, eyes toward the floor, averting gaze, submission, fear. Dana caught the moment with chilling clarity. It was textbook. Victims of long-term control often avoided eye contact with law enforcement or animals trained to protect because even a flicker of hope could invite punishment. She slowed her steps, giving Scout a little more slack on the leash. Scout didn't bark. He didn't break posture. But his head tilted slightly, his ears rotated forward, and a barely there whine escaped his throat. It was the softest sound, but Dana heard it and felt it. She casually let her eyes pass over the man. He noticed her but didn't engage, smiled politely, then returned to his phone. His hand, however, gripped the boy's wrist again. Not visibly harsh, but firm, like he was anchoring the boy in place. Dana's training told her not to confront yet. She needed cause, something more. But inside, the warning bells were deafening. She glanced back once more. The boy's eyes flicked up again briefly. This time, just for a second, they met hers. Wide, unreadable, but unmistakably alert. It was like he was trying to memorize her face. A flicker of silent desperation, then it was gone. Scout took a single step toward him. The leash pulled. Dana held it back. Enough. For now. She pressed the button on her radio mic, requesting Child Welfare Liaison to be on standby, possibly nonverbal victim. Advise discreet observation. The reply was immediate. Copy that. Officer Ruiz, Gate B-17. You have backup en route. Dana turned away with Scout, her jaw tight. Behind her, the boy shifted in his seat, his hand slipping into the small pocket of his hoodie. His fingers brushed against a piece of paper folded down to half the size of his palm. He didn't pull it out. Not yet. The man beside him was watching too closely. But he kept his fingers there, touching the edge, holding it as if it was the only thing tethering him to something real. Something safe. Dana didn't see it, but Scout did, and that was enough. For now. The air in the secondary screening room was cooler than the main terminal, the hum of the fluorescents vibrating faintly above the buzz of murmured radio chatter. Dana Ruiz stood just outside the glass partition, her stance relaxed, but her gaze razor-sharp. Inside, seated across a metal desk, the man in the blazer handed over the travel documents with a polite smile and no visible hesitation. "All there, officer," he said, his voice carrying the smooth cadence of practiced calm. The passport was clean, U.S.-issued barcode intact, photo matched perfectly. The birth certificate followed, slightly folded at the edges, but legible, bearing the boy's name and listing the man as his legal father. TSA agent Ronald Green, a seasoned screener in his mid-30s with a no-nonsense demeanor, flipped through the documents with deliberate precision. "You've traveled with him before?" Green asked, glancing between the papers and the boy who sat quietly next to the man, eyes fixed on the floor. "A few times. Mostly regional," the man replied, shifting casually in his seat. "He's not great with crowds. Airports make him nervous." His tone was sympathetic, practiced, almost paternal. Green nodded slowly, scanning for any inconsistencies. Everything checked out. The photo of the boy was a few years old, but the features matched. Same nose, same curl pattern in his hair. The birth certificate came from a reputable county office in South Carolina. No signs of forgery. No red flags on the electronic scan. Everything was textbook. But as Green prepared to return the documents, a small moment unraveled the neat picture. The boy had dropped his backpack, and as he leaned forward to pick it up, he turned slightly toward the man and said softly but audibly, "Thank you, sir." The word floated into the air like an out-of-place note in a familiar song. Green's hand froze mid-motion. He glanced sideways, his expression unreadable, then set the documents down deliberately. "Sir," he repeated more to himself than to the boy. The man laughed quickly, too quickly. "It's a habit," he said, "politeness. I've been working on that with him. He knows to address adults respectfully." The boy flinched slightly at the explanation. Green said nothing for a moment, then stood and stepped outside. Dana met him by the door. "Everything's clean," he said, his voice low. "Documents are legit. If they're forged, it's top shelf." "But the boy called him Sir," Dana asked before he could finish. Green nodded. "Didn't call him Dad, not once." Dana chewed the inside of her cheek. "What's your gut say?" Green shrugged. "Could be nothing. Could be trauma training, or they're not related, and he doesn't know how to play the role." Dana tapped her fingers against her thigh. Scout flagged him. "We have enough for a soft hold," Green considered it. "Barely. If he complains, we're pushing policy limits. But if you ask for voluntary clarification under the Child Travel Act, it buys time." Dana re-entered the room with a calm professionalism that masked the growing unease in her chest. She offered the man a smile as she stepped forward. "Mr. Carter, would you mind if we asked your son a couple of quick questions? Standard protocol under the Children's Domestic Travel Verification Clause. It won't take long." The man's jaw tightened for a fraction of a second before he plastered on a smile. "Of course, officer. Whatever's necessary." The boy glanced up briefly, locking eyes with Dana. Something flickered there again, recognition perhaps, or hope. She crouched beside his chair, her voice soft but clear. "Hey there, what's your name?" The boy hesitated, eyes darting to the man who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Marcus," he whispered. Dana smiled. "Marcus, I just need to check that you're okay flying today. Can you tell me where you're going?" Marcus glanced at the man again, then back at Dana. "Chicago," he said after a pause. "To see family?" she asked. He nodded. "Who's in Chicago?" she pressed gently. Marcus blinked. "Grandma. That's nice," Dana said, keeping her voice light. "Do you live with your dad?" Another glance. Another pause. "Sometimes," Marcus said. "Sometimes with Auntie." Dana smiled again, but her mind was racing. Inconsistent language, fragmented phrasing, coached possibly, but not fully. She stood. "Thank you, Marcus, you did great." She turned back to the man. "We'll just need a quick follow-up from the child welfare rep. You're free to wait here or near the gate." The man's smile thinned, but he nodded. "I'd prefer to wait at the gate. We're boarding soon. Understood?" Donna said, gesturing for Green. The pair exited into the corridor. "He's nervous," Green muttered. "You saw it." Dana nodded. "And the kid isn't just nervous. He's calculating, like he's trying to remember what he's allowed to say." Green lowered his voice. "If he's been coached, they didn't do a great job, but none of it's enough, not without more." Dana exhaled slowly. "Then we find more." As they walked away, Marcus remained seated, the man beside him, scrolling again through his phone. But Marcus's fingers were back in the pocket of his hoodie, brushing against that small piece of paper folded tightly in his palm. A secret, a hope, waiting. Back in the airport security operations center, Dana Ruiz and TSA agent Green stood shoulder to shoulder in front of a wall of monitors, their eyes moving rapidly between feeds as the footage from the long-term parking structure loaded. Dana had requested it under a discretionary clause citing behavioral anomalies and inconsistencies in minor verbal responses, and Green had pushed it through with minimal resistance. The digital timeline began ticking backward as they rewound to the moment the man's license plate registered at the parking entrance. The feed flickered stabilized, and there he was, Mr. Carter exiting a beige Nissan Sentra at 8:14 a.m. He stepped out of the driver's side, adjusted his blazer, retrieved a rolling suitcase from the trunk, and began walking toward the shuttle platform. Alone. "Where's the kid?" Green asked quietly. Dana leaned in, narrowing her eyes. "Back seat's empty. You sure play it again slower." They rewound this time frame by frame. The rear doors never opened. No movement from the passenger side. No child visible through the window. The boy wasn't with him when he parked. "Check the shuttle cam," Dana said, her tone now clipped with urgency. Green nodded, punching in the command. A grainier feed loaded, showing the terminal loop shuttle pulling into the parking lot stop at 8:17. The man boarded sat near the back luggage beside him. Again, he was alone, no child. Dana crossed her arms tightly. So, where did Marcus come from? Let's pull the terminal exterior entrance cams, Green said, already typing. Between 8:30 and 8:50. It took a few minutes to parse, but the footage loaded cleanly. One camera, angled above the west terminal doors, captured a crowd entering just after 8:43. They slowed the footage, skimming through faces until Dana suddenly pointed. There. A frame where the man reappeared now with Marcus beside him. But the moment wasn't casual, it was precise. Marcus was at his side but not walking fluidly. His body leaned slightly backward, his arm stretched taut as the man's hand gripped his wrist, not his hand, and pulled him through the automatic doors. Zoom in, Dana ordered. The image pixelated, but the posture was clear. Marcus wasn't holding hands with someone he trusted. He was being led firmly and without comfort. That's a drag, Green muttered. He's not walking willingly. Dana took a slow breath, watching it again. That's not a father leading a nervous kid. That's control. Green nodded. He found the kid after arriving. Somewhere between parking and terminal. Or picked him up already subdued. Somewhere nearby. We need more angles. Dana tapped the radio on her vest. Dispatch, I need all feeds covering the pedestrian walkways and terminal curb from 8:00 to 9:00 a.m. full access. This is now a probable child safety concern. The reply was swift. Copy Officer Ruiz. Routing access now. Minutes later, they were combing through additional feeds, finally catching a side view camera that filled in the missing link. At 8:41 a.m., the man appeared again, this time emerging from behind a row of shuttle buses near the loading zone. Marcus was with him, but not before. He hadn't entered the airport with the man, but had joined him just 2 minutes before their entrance through the west doors. Dana leaned in. Where did the boy come from? Backtrack that exact frame. Follow the corner feed. Another monitor lit up, showing the narrow sidewalk between the shuttle depot and employee rest area. And there, grainy but visible Marcus, standing alone, half-shielded behind a concrete support beam. The boy had been waiting. For someone. Or had been left there. A minute later, the man walked into frame, looked around, then made a beeline toward the boy. He knelt, briefly, seconds no more, then stood and took Marcus's wrist. Not a hug, not a greeting, just a quick grasp and movement. He was staged, Dana murmured, or left there ahead of time. Green looked troubled. You thinking handoff possibly, or he came from a car that dropped him off out of range. Either way, it's premeditated. We need airport exterior road footage, Dana said, from about 8:30 to 8:40. Focus on vehicles that stop without parking. As the footage loaded, they watched as a black sedan pulled briefly into the loading lane, blinkers on. The camera didn't catch plates clearly, but a small figure emerged from the back seat, a child-sized frame, and walked swiftly toward the shuttle area. The car pulled away before any enforcement could respond. No parent, no driver exit. Just drop and go. Clock it at 8:39. Then 2 minutes later, Mr. Carter picks him up. He was waiting for that car. Dana's voice dropped to a near whisper. He knew exactly where and when. And Marcus Green asked. Dana shook her head. He didn't run. He didn't try to hide. He waited, because that's what he was told to do. They both stood silent for a moment, the monitors flickering cold light across their faces. He wasn't traveling with him, Dana said finally. Not at the start, not legally. And now we can prove it. But Green was already looking at a new frame. There's more, the way he pulls the kid inside. Look. Dana turned. The overhead camera at the entry doors caught the moment again, this time from behind, and it was clearer than before. The boy's shoulders were hunched, his body resisted slightly, and the man's grip didn't loosen. He tugged Marcus forward with just enough pressure to communicate compliance was not optional. That's not just physical guidance, Green said. That's intimidation. Dana didn't reply. Her hand hovered over her radio. We flag this now. Get Child Protective Services inbound, and I want facial recognition on the man. We're going deeper. Her mind was racing ahead past the surveillance, past the official processes. She was already thinking of Marcus, still sitting quietly at the gate, clutching that paper in his hoodie like it was a lifeline. Whatever was on it, it was next. The tension in Dana's chest hadn't let up for a second. Surveillance feeds gave her enough to justify a welfare check, but her instincts told her the real story still lived in the quiet in the boy's body language and the silence that stretched around him like a thin, trembling shell. She needed to see Marcus up close again, but carefully. No sirens, no radio chatter, just proximity. She and Scout walked back into the gate area, keeping their pace relaxed. Around them, travelers sipped coffee and stared at phones, completely unaware that something was unraveling in plain sight. Marcus and the man still sat in the same seats side by side, but not truly together. The man scrolled his phone, his thumb moving in slow, deliberate flicks, but his eyes cut sideways every few seconds, always landing on Marcus, always checking. Dana noticed it, control by glance. Scout's pace slowed as they neared. The moment the dog came into Marcus's peripheral vision, his posture shifted slightly. Not a startle, not fear, but attention. Dana took that as her cue. She bent slightly at the knees, keeping her voice low and warm, her badge clipped inside her coat but visible if needed. "Hey there, Marcus," she said gently. The boy didn't answer, didn't flinch, but his eyes rose slowly, cautiously toward her face and then drifted down to Scout. Not just a glance, he looked at the dog like it was the only safe thing in the room. "You remember me, right?" Dana asked, maintaining the softness in her tone. "We talked earlier. You did really well." Marcus blinked but said nothing. Dana nodded, as if he had responded. "This is Scout. He's really good at finding things, and he's really good at understanding people who don't always want to talk." The man beside him shifted. "Is there a problem?" "Officer," he asked, polite but firm. Dana didn't look at him. "Just saying hi," she replied. "Your flight's delayed by 20 minutes. Bad weather in Chicago." She wasn't sure if it was true, but it bought her time. The man grunted. "That figures." Dana took one small step closer. Scout inched forward on his own, his nose twitching, his gaze fixed on the boy, not aggressive, not even excited. Just present, alert. A stillness built in the air between them. Dana saw Marcus's fingers tighten slightly on the strap of his backpack, which sat in his lap. Scout leaned in, sniffed the side of the bag, then pressed his nose into the outer zipper. Dana let the leash slacken slightly. Scout didn't bark, didn't paw wildly, but he did place one paw firmly on the backpack and then another. Then he scratched once deliberate and pulled his nose back to look at Dana. Dana's breath caught. That wasn't a search cue, that was a signal. "There's something here." Marcus's eyes followed Scout's every move, wide and unblinking. Dana squatted beside him, close enough to speak in a whisper. "Marcus, I need to look in your bag, okay? Just to make sure you're safe." The boy didn't nod, but his fingers unclenched. Slowly, Dana reached forward, unzipped the outer pouch, and found a rolled-up napkin carefully folded nearly flat. Her fingers slid it free. Scout sat down immediately beside her, tail still. Dana unrolled it. In shaky pencil letters written in small, deliberate strokes, "Help me." That was it, nothing more. But it hit Dana like a punch to the sternum. The air seemed to drop 10 degrees. She didn't react visibly, didn't even glance at the man who now watched her more closely. Instead, she calmly folded the napkin and slipped it into her sleeve. "Thank you, Marcus," she whispered. "That was really brave." The boy's eyes dropped again, but this time his shoulders released just a fraction of tension. Dana stood and turned. "We'll have boarding updates soon," she said to the man. "Appreciate your patience." The man nodded stiffly. "Of course." Dana walked away without showing a hint of urgency, but the moment she rounded the corner past the next gate, her fingers pressed her earpiece. "Dispatch Ruiz. Confirm immediate protective hold on minor Marcus Hill. Suspected abduction in progress. Request backup CPS and plainclothes intercept. Moving now." Behind her, Scout stood up again, ready. There was no hesitation in his gait as he turned back toward the gate. Whatever was next, they were done being quiet. The interview room at the airport's Emergency Child Services office was painted in pastel tones, a futile attempt at comfort against the cold sterility of what it represented. A small table sat in the center, two chairs on either side, a tray of crayons and paper laid out between them like offerings in a silent negotiation. Marcus sat motionless in one chair, his backpack now resting on the floor beside him, his hoodie sleeves pulled over his hands as if shielding him from a world that had never asked him what he wanted. Officer Dana Ruiz stood in the observation booth behind the one-way mirror, flanked by a social worker and a CPS officer named Leanne, who had the quiet steadiness of someone used to stepping into chaos without adding to it. Leanne had tried everything: gentle questions, calm tones, small snacks, even sitting in silence for 20 minutes just to build some sort of bridge, but Marcus hadn't spoken a word since being removed from the gate. And yet he hadn't cried either. He hadn't shown fear, only silence and observation. That told Dana more than words ever could. Leanne stepped back from the table, letting the boy have space. She returned to the window and exhaled. It's like he's waiting for permission to speak, but from someone who's not in this room. Dana nodded slowly. He's not shut down. He's alert. He's just been trained not to initiate. Trained, the social worker asked, or threatened. Maybe both, Dana murmured. They all turned as Marcus suddenly reached toward the tray of crayons. No one moved. His fingers hovered, then selected a black crayon and a sheet of paper. Leanne didn't approach. She simply took a seat again across the room and waited. Marcus began to draw. Slowly, carefully. Not the abstract scribbles of a nervous child, but the calculated precision of someone replicating something seen too many times to forget. He started with the outline of a rectangular structure, then added a side entrance, a loading dock, and a narrow alley running along the left wall. He shaded certain areas more heavily, and then without glancing up he drew what looked like tiny eyes near corners and doorways. It wasn't until he drew dotted lines between those shapes that Dana understood what she was looking at. "Zoom in," she said to the tech beside her. The monitor screen expanded to show the paper. "Those aren't just shapes," Leanne said, stepping closer. "They're cameras," Dana confirmed. "That's a security network layout," Marcus continued. He added arrows indicating field of view blind spots and even a small X behind the building where no camera appeared to be directed. Then he pushed the paper forward, still without speaking, and sat back, hands folded in his lap. Leanne hesitated, then picked it up and carried it out of the room. In the hallway, she handed it to Donna. "That's not something a kid just guesses," she said. No, Dana agreed. That's tactical knowledge. Someone showed him that over and over until he could remember it exactly. Green joined them moments later, having been called in from surveillance. "We just got a match," he said, holding up a tablet. "Based on the layout he drew, this looks like an abandoned textile warehouse on South Haven near West Junction. Same angles. Same camera placement." "That's near the Edgeview block, right?" Dana asked. "Mostly low-income housing, heavy foot traffic." Green nodded. "Cameras were installed by a private contractor 5 months ago, funded by a local youth development nonprofit. But that nonprofit doesn't have any actual programs registered with the state. So, it's a shell," Dana muttered. "Someone's laundering property ownership through a fake community org, and using that warehouse for something they don't want seen," Leanne added. "What's at the X?" He marked back alley dumpster. "Blind spot. Only point of entry not covered by camera." Dana folded the paper carefully. "He's showing us how to get in quietly." Green tilted his head. "You think he's been inside? I think he lived there," Dana said. "Or was kept there. More than that." Leanne said, her voice quiet. "He was trained there." Dana stared through the glass at Marcus, still sitting motionless, eyes downcast but now glancing subtly toward the crayon tray again. "He's not just a victim," she whispered. "He's the map." With the map still fresh in her mind and the lines etched by a child's hand burning in her chest, Donna turned her attention to the most tangible thread left: the documents. The passport and birth certificate used by the man now in custody under suspicion of child abduction had passed initial scans, but that meant little under deeper scrutiny. Within the secured digital lab, a forensics specialist named Javier sat hunched over a monitor, fingers flying across keys as he deconstructed the embedded metadata layer by layer. "You were right to be suspicious," he said without looking up. "This passport didn't come from the government. It mimics the specs of a legit U.S. document, but the serial number batch it belongs to was never actually released." Dana folded her arms, tension hardening her spine. "So it's fake." "It's better than fake," Javier replied. "It's tailored. Whoever made this knew exactly how to replicate federal authentication patterns without tripping initial database flags. That takes access to actual template data, not just visual forgeries." "Who can do that?" Dana asked. Javier clicked a few more times and zoomed into the microscopic ink dispersal patterns. "These microtag patterns," he pointed to a barely visible dot sequence. "They're proprietary, and they've been found on documents seized in only 3 known raids, 2 in California, 1 in Houston. But this variant, the specific thermal embossing, it traces back to a ring in El Paso." Dana blinked. "El Paso? That's border territory." "Exactly," Javier said. "This shop is known to make synthetic identities for unaccompanied minors and undocumented migrants, but they sell their services to anyone with enough cash. Smugglers, traffickers, fake adoption brokers. So Marcus was outfitted with a fake identity designed for transit," Dana murmured. "Someone wanted him to disappear clean. And the man who held it," Javier pulled up a biometric scan. "His prints came back clean. No criminal record. But his alias James Carter has been used under at least 5 variations in different states. All tied to short-term rentals and burner phones. He's a handler, not a parent." Dana stared at the screen, her stomach turning. "So Marcus isn't just a kidnapped child. He's part of a system." Back in the child services office, Leanne had resumed sitting with Marcus. He still hadn't spoken, but he accepted a juice box without flinching and had moved his chair slightly closer to the wall, one foot tapping rhythmically against the floor. The child knew something had shifted. Dana walked in quietly and took a seat across from him. She placed a photograph on the table, not of the warehouse, not of the man, but of a little boy smiling at a birthday cake. His cheeks rounder, his hair shorter, and his eyes the same shade of guarded hope. Marcus looked at it and froze. "Is this you?" Dana asked gently. Marcus looked up for the first time in hours and nodded. Just once. "Your name isn't Marcus, is it?" Another pause. Then, almost imperceptibly, he shook his head. Dana didn't push. Instead, she turned to Leanne. "Run this image through NCMEC, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and Louisiana. Focus on missing African American children between 5 and 10 years old, reported within the last 5 years." 2 hours later, the database returned a match. Missing child report, Malik Devin Harris. Reported missing from DeKalb County, Georgia. Date April 23rd, 2 years prior. Age then 7. Age now 9. Physical match 96%. Parental match confirmed via DNA within a day. "Why wasn't this flagged sooner?" Dana asked the caseworker. "Because the family stopped responding after 6 months," she replied. The mother told the local PD she'd received a call warning her to stop pushing or something would happen to her other son. "They threatened her," Dana said, jaw clenched, "and they used fear to erase Malik." "It worked," Leanne said, her voice brittle. "No active search alerts were left on his file. He was effectively marked non-recoverable." Until now, Dana said, her eyes on the boy again, who had curled up in the chair, no longer drawing, no longer hiding, just watching. Quiet, but not gone. Present. And waiting for someone to finally finish the sentence he had never been allowed to start. While the match confirming Malik Devin Harris's identity opened the door to justice, the real architecture of the operation remained elusive. Dana knew that finding the boy was only one piece of a much more layered story, and the man in custody, James Carter, or whatever his real name was, still hadn't cracked. In the interrogation room, he sat comfortably, almost smugly, his hands folded on the table, eyes clear and steady, not with the desperation of someone caught in criminal activity, but with the calm detachment of someone confident that their role was insulated by technicality. "I'm not who you think I am," he began when Donna stepped in her arms, crossed her tone unreadable. Then let's start with who you are, she replied. Because what we know is that you entered this airport alone, then collected a missing child at the terminal entrance, used falsified documents, and intended to board a flight under an alias. The man exhaled slowly, as though waiting for the opportunity to finally explain. I'm not trafficking him, he said. I was hired to escort the boy to Chicago. Safely, that's it. I don't know his real name. I don't know where he came from. I was told to use the documents and get him on the plane, that's all. My role is containment and delivery, nothing else. Containment, Dana echoed, leaning forward. He's not a package. To them, he is the man replied without apology. I don't choose what I do. I just make sure the kid arrives alive, unbothered, and without suspicion. You can call me what you want, but I'm not the buyer. I'm not even the seller. I'm the courier. Who hired you? Dana asked sharply. He didn't hesitate. A woman. She said she was the boy's mother. Paid in cash, half up front, half on arrival. All I had to do was follow the script. Name didn't give one. She used a burner phone. Told me to meet the boy near the shuttle depot. She said he'd be alone, waiting. Donna stared at him, revolted by the casualness in his tone. So you didn't ask any questions when a woman asked you to collect a child and move him across state lines under a fake identity. She had paperwork. He shrugged. Birth certificate, passport, everything matched. You knew it was fake, Dana said. Maybe. But it wasn't my problem. It is now. At that moment, Green knocked on the observation glass. Dana stepped outside to meet him. You're not going to believe this, he said, holding up a phone. We just got a visitor at the front desk. Says she's the boy's mother. Has paperwork, same name on the birth certificate the guy was carrying. She's demanding to speak with Malik. Where is she now detained? Quiet room. We're verifying her ID now. Dana made her way swiftly through the halls, her heart pounding not with panic, but with a slow-burning rage. Inside the quiet room sat a woman in her early 40s, dressed in neutral business attire. Her hair pulled into a sleek bun makeup, minimal but practiced. She looked up when Dana entered, calm and poised like someone used to boardrooms and custody battles. I need to see my son, she said. My name is Brenda Ellis. Malik is my child. I have full custodial rights. You have documentation to support that Dana asked. Brenda nodded, handing over a folder. Inside were freshly printed documents, a Georgia-issued birth certificate with her name as mother, a court-verified guardianship agreement from a family court in Fulton County, and medical forms listing her as the primary emergency contact. Dana reviewed them with a practiced eye. The ink was dry, the seals looked legitimate, but the timing was too clean. Malik's been missing for 2 years, Dana said, eyes never leaving the woman. You never filed a report, never followed up, never contacted police. Because I was told he was dead, Brenda replied, her voice sharp. His father took him when we separated. I was told they died in a car accident in Alabama. The investigator said there was no point in reopening the case. That was 18 months ago. I didn't know he was alive until I got a call last month. From whom? An anonymous woman. She said she had information on my son, that he was alive but had no documents. She told me I needed to get paperwork prepared because he was being moved, and if I wanted him back, I had to act fast. She gave me a location, sent me the scanned birth certificate to reprint. So you forged it? No. I just followed instructions. The information was correct. I'm his biological mother. You understand what that sounds like? Dana asked. Yes. Like I'm part of something illegal, but I'm not. I just wanted my son back. And you sent a man to retrieve him? No. She said she would arrange safe transport. That it was better if I stayed out of the first leg. She warned me that if I interfered, I might never see him again. Did you pay anyone? Yes. $10,000 in cash. Dana stared at her. Do you have proof of maternity DNA? She replied immediately. I brought a certified copy of the original test from when he was born, and I'm willing to take another. Dana said nothing for a moment, just watched this woman, composed, intelligent, and maybe desperate enough to follow any lead without asking the right questions. Back in the observation room, Green was already preparing to cross-check the documents and initiate emergency familial DNA testing. If she's telling the truth, he muttered she was used, just like the courier. And if she's lying, Donna said she's one step deeper than the man who grabbed the boy. Either way, Green said somebody else is still pulling the strings. The DNA results came back faster than anyone expected, an urgent analysis expedited through federal child recovery protocols, triggered by the confirmation of Malik's missing person status. The sheet that slid across Dana's desk was deceptively simple. A single-page report bearing a bold red header that read, "No genetic relationship confirmed." She stared at it, the words burning into her mind like an indictment. Brenda Ellis, the composed woman who'd claimed maternal rights with confidence and provided polished documents, was not Malik's mother. Not a cousin, not a distant aunt, not even a 1% match. Zero biological relation. The lie was complete. Dana walked into the quiet room where Brenda waited, her expression unreadable. She held the paper loosely in one hand. "There's no DNA connection between you and Malik," she said calmly. "You're not his mother." Brenda blinked, slowly, lips parting slightly, but forming no words. "Would you like to try again?" Dana asked. "Tell me who you really are." The poise cracked, just slightly. Brenda glanced at the wall, the floor, then back at Dana. "They told me it would work," she said finally. "They told me the records would be enough." "Who's a they? I don't know names," Brenda said. "I was contacted, recruited. They said there were children who needed placement. Legal guardianship under private contracts. I was one of several, placement," Dana repeated. "You're talking about foster care. It's not state-run," Brenda said, voice tight. "It's parallel. Alternative care programs, off-record, for kids that can't go through the system. You were part of a black market adoption ring." "No," Brenda snapped. "I was told I was helping. That these kids were forgotten, abandoned. That I could give them a chance. And Malik, he was assigned to me. But I wasn't his first. He'd already been through 2 placements. They said he was difficult, unresponsive. I was told to be patient, to reinforce behavior boundaries, to never call him by his original name." Dana's stomach turned. "He's 9 years old. You call that assignment?" Brenda's eyes hardened. "You don't understand how deep this goes. There are warehouses, compounds, training cycles. They're raised, conditioned. They're taught to obey, to mimic social behavior. Then they're matched with people like me, people who've passed their filters. I was background checked, financially stable. I look like someone who could blend." Dana felt bile rise in her throat. "You're telling me there's a system, a whole system built to raise stolen children for what sales servitude?" Brenda looked away. "Service," she said softly. "That's the word they used. Some go overseas. Some stay. Some are trained to assist, carry, deliver, even distract. They don't see them as people, just tools. Ones that can be shaped if you start young enough." "Malik escaped. He wasn't supposed to," Brenda said. "They pulled him from the program too early. He wasn't ready. The behavior markers weren't stable. He still remembered things. Still hesitated. That's why they transferred him, out reallocation, they said. They gave me the script, the paperwork, the man to escort him. But he froze. Something about the airport or the dog, Dana echoed. Scout. He wasn't trained for that, Brenda said bitterly. He wasn't supposed to react, but he did. And now, Dana took a step forward. Now he's free. And you're going to tell me everything, where the warehouses are, who recruited you, who you answered to. Brenda said nothing for a long time. Then quietly, they won't let me live if I talk. Dana leaned in. You should worry more about what happens if you don't. Back in the observation room, Malik sat with Leanne, still silent, but calmer. A blank sheet of paper lay before him. He had drawn nothing this time. Instead, he had pushed it gently toward her. On the bottom corner, in small block letters, he had written a single word more. Leanne looked at Dana. What does that mean? Dana stared through the glass, the truth finally falling into place. It means he's not the only one. It wasn't in the courtroom, or the press briefing, or the classified interagency report that the story truly ended. It was in a quiet moment back in the Office of Child Protective Services, where Malik sat once more at the table, a worn hoodie too large for his small frame, and eyes still hesitant like someone learning to breathe in a place where the air didn't hurt. Dana stood in the doorway, watching from a respectful distance, holding a file in her hands, not because she needed it anymore, but because routine gave her something to grip. Scout lay beside her feet, quiet, patient, as always his body language soft but attentive. It had been hours since Brenda Ellis had finally given up the addresses, names, and secondary contacts, confessing in exhausted detail how the entire operation had been masked through a web of charitable programs, housing grants, and mentorship initiatives across 3 states. They ran homes for vulnerable children, mostly undocumented, orphaned, or born into unstable environments, and trained them with scripts, behavioral conditioning, and controlled exposure to public spaces. Once they graduated, the children were reassigned under forged identities and matched with handlers like Brenda, who played the role of legal guardians but were nothing more than cogs in a system that valued invisibility over humanity. With those leads, raids were launched overnight. The first warehouse in South Haven was empty, cleared just hours earlier, leaving behind only traces bedding training charts and a wall covered in laminated photos of children, each tagged with a code and status label. One facility led to another one in Dallas, one near Birmingham, and the scope widened. The nonprofit at the center, Pathlight Children's Foundation, had real federal funding endorsements, and a board of directors, most of whom were now under federal custody. Donna had seen the kind of darkness that buried itself in legitimacy before, but never like this. Never so polished, so systemic, so casual in its evil. Still, in this room, that world felt far away. What was in front of her now was not a case file, but a boy. Malik had not spoken, not once, since the airport. He had drawn, nodded, followed directions, even hugged Leanne once, but his voice, like his name, remained locked away. Until Scout moved. Without a command, the dog rose and walked gently to Malik's side, pressing his body close but not insistent. Malik turned eyes, meeting the dog's, and something shifted, not in posture or breath, but in presence, as if recognition finally settled in a place deeper than language. Dana stepped forward quietly. "Malik," she said, testing it, the name she knew was his, the one stolen and hidden beneath layers of false identities. The boy blinked. His lips parted slightly. She knelt beside him, not too close, and said again, softer this time, "Malik Harris. That's your name. It always was." Scout let out a soft whine, not distressed, but gentle coaxing, and Malik finally gave in. His small shoulders trembled once, then again, and then the tears came not loud or frantic, but slow and exhausted, like they had waited too long to be allowed. He didn't cry into anyone's arms. He cried sitting upright quietly, Scout's head resting on his knee, grounding him. Dana didn't move to wipe his tears. She just let them fall. When the wave passed, Malik wiped his own face, then turned to Dana, and for the first time nodded. Once. Deliberate. "Okay," he whispered, his first word, his choice. Days later, after the press conferences and legal maneuvers, there was a small ceremony held at the airport, where it had all started, not for press, not for spectacle, but for the people who had acted when protocol told them to move on. Dana received commendations. Green, too, but the center of attention, quiet as ever, was Scout. The airport commissioner knelt to place a silver badge on the dog's collar, engraved with the words, "For unspoken service and silent courage." No bark, no tail wag. Scout simply stood still, eyes calm, as if he understood that what he had done was more than detection, it was recognition. Later, Malik stood beside Dana, his hand resting on Scout's back, his voice still tentative but present. "He saw me," he said. Just 3 words, but they held everything. In a world built to erase him, it had taken a dog's gaze to prove he was still there. If this story moved, you don't forget to like and subscribe for more true-to-life narratives that go deeper than headlines. What part of Malik's journey struck you the most? Was it Scout's silent signal or the moment Malik finally spoke his name? And by the way, where are you watching from? Drop a comment and let's see how far this story has reached.